Welcome everyone to Mamapreneur, birthing the next generation of heroes and heroines. I'm really excited to be here again. My name's Tanya Lynn, and I'm interviewing amazing moms and moms to be on their journey into motherhood. And really, it's about how do we balance, if balance is even such a word, and I think Lex and I will get into that today. How to balance baby and business. So I have with me today Lex Vernon, who I'm really excited because she's rocking it. She's doing it all, and I think she's got some real real stuff to share with us today. So hi, Lex.
Hello.
So let's start with that. This word balance. I know that one of the things you wrote about is that what balance, right? So let's just start there of like, does balance exist with baby and business, and what advice would you have for women around this?
To me, the whole notion of balance, whether you have a baby or not, is somewhat flawed, right? Because unless you are independently wealthy, and if you are, bless you, and you don't work a minimum of 10 plus hours a week, there's just not enough time to balance all the spheres of life that matter. Balance also necessitates some level of control. And as somebody who is inherently wired to seek control, one of the greatest gifts of having my little one, beyond her, of course, has been having to let go of that control. Because whether it's when is she going to be hungry and want to eat, when is it that she's going to want to nap, when is it that she's going to desire to soil a diaper, all of that um, is always up in the air. It's slightly precarious, and that inherently means that I have to be ready to pivot what my expectations were for myself and what my expectations were for her, like this. Today's a perfect example. As you know, we're filming this while I'm on the tail end of a trip to La Jolla with my family. Just as we were getting started to do this, she started to go into the fits, very whiny, and suddenly had to run out of the room with my computer and find some other place to do this. So for me, rather than trying to be balanced, I'm really seeking integration, which means that I'm mindfully making decisions about how I'm entering one sphere of my life. And I've had moments where I've tried to just integrate it all at the same time, and I find that for me personally, that's really hard. I'm not somebody who can work on my laptop, on my bed, with my daughter running around, on a phone call. Like, I need to, while I can flip back and forth between those spheres of life, like today, for example, I can be a mom and be on, but I need to run away for a few minutes to be able to do something work related. I need to be clear about what mode I'm in on a moment to moment basis, and also be very, like I said, mindful of when I'm in something, I'm shutting the rest off. That's what works for me.
Mm. And so obviously someone's with baby cakes right now, and
No, she's a year and she can entertain herself. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yes. I saw the look on your face. My
so let's
husband is.
but let's talk about that. How have
Yeah.
you been able to run your business, and what changes have you had to make, and what's the support structure that you're using now to make it happen?
Yes. The support structure, I feel, has evolved every couple of months when new predicaments present themselves. So initially, I had a team that consisted of my dad and my husband and my mom. So my husband took about 3 months off from work, where that was amazing. We could be home co-parenting in the way we wanted, and I would sometimes have to go off and do a one-day speaking engagement, and my mom and him would share her. Then, as the summer started to come around and he was traveling quite a bit, it became clear that trying to work primarily during my daughter's naps, which once she was hitting the 6 month mark, her sleep time was just going down. And having my mom once a week was not cutting it, especially as I was going into a launch. So I brought on a very part-time nanny who was actually somebody already working in my business who had a lot of childcare experience. So that was interesting because she had two different roles, two different pay rates for when she was working in my business versus when she was working with my daughter for about 8 hours a week. Now, because she's about to be a mama herself, I'm losing her. So everything feels very up in flux again. My husband's work schedule is also constantly changing. So When it became clear at the end of the year he was going to have a period of time off, things felt really delicious again because I got to work much more intensely in my business for a period of time. He got to be primary parent, so that's why he's with her now. When I was here to do some business, he was with her during the day. But looking to bring on somebody who I don't know, which feels very scary in the capacity of nanny for probably 10 or 15 hours a week. And I'm just starting that process, and I'm not going to lie, it feels very scary and very difficult because I hadn't had to do that the first year.
Mm. And so, I think one of the things that you and I have talked about, and I think this would be great to share, is a lot of moms uh, maybe perhaps don't want to work right away. And I think you kind of had a different experience. So share
I
with
did.
us about how, like, what has happened for you in this first year with your child and wanting to go back to work and really dialing it up with your business as well.
I had initially thought that I wanted to take about 5 to 6 months off, with the exception of fulfilling my commitment. I was running my first year of a women's leadership program that met one day a month. So that felt very low touch, right? I can work behind the scenes to make sure that those women feel supported as my time permits. Show up one day a month, be completely on, and then not do much of anything else. What started to happen, though, is that as I ultimately experienced postpartum depression about 5 to 6 weeks in, that fortunately I was able to get out of just shortly after 2 months. So it was a very intense period of depression, and fortunately one that I was able to come out of very quickly as well. But during that time, the only thing that I felt good at was my work with women. And so I started to recognize it actually enables me to be of more service to my daughter as a mom if I feel good about who I am, because I was so totally not trusting myself, feeling like I didn't know how to make her cry. I wasn't able to breastfeed, so that did a tremendous number on my sense of identity, since that had felt like it was just going to be a given. And fortunately, because I had such phenomenal family support around me, was able to work on my first digital training program for women. So I spent a lot of time being able to tease that out, designing over 4 hours of video content, putting together all the stuff that those of you who are in the online business world know, the opt-in, the free video training, the actual training, all of that. That to me felt like such a needed creative outlet that then allowed me, when I was mom, which was most of the time, to start to feel whole again and to feel like I had things to contribute. And from there, really made some clear decisions about wanting to bring more and more of my business online, since that did free me up to be with my daughter, and to let go of some of the work that I was doing that, while rewarding, just wasn't paying me what I was worth. And suddenly that became much more of a problem, because I knew in my head, I can be with my daughter right now, or I can be doing work where I'm compromising my boundaries. I'm being out of my integrity by not earning my worth. So now I do have private clients, but we work in a very different way, much more around speaking mentorship, which feels delicious and juicy, and I can be full-time mom, essentially.
Wow. So I just really want to tease out of what you just said is this idea of self-care. And
Hmm.
a lot of times when we think of self-care, it's about me taking time off of work.
Right.
And what I'm really hearing here is it's the put your oxygen mask on first so
Yes.
that you as a woman are being the best you can be and having your tank full so that you can fully show up for your little one. And I think here what you're demonstrating so beautifully is that sometimes that might mean working on what you're most passionate about to have the passion be your oxygen and to fill you up so then you can be fully present with your daughter. How beautiful is that?
You restated that so exquisitely, because I don't think I'd ever had that realization that my version of self-care now is oftentimes working in my business, because at the end of the day, self-care is about filling our tank, as you state. And while yoga, of course, is a piece of that, for me, more than anything, what fills my tank right now is feeling like I'm making a contribution in the world to women.
Mm. Yeah, and I think what I've personally have done, just a little comment here, is I have found a way of me receiving from my work so that my work fills me up, and I'm hearing that as well. And a key piece here is that you had to really get clear on your value and your worth so that it didn't feel like burnout. I think a lot of women experience burnout with their work because they're not charging what they're worth. And so then it's like, oh, I'm giving it all away, and what am I getting, right? And so you found that balance, if we want to use that word, of you've been able to compensate yourself fairly in the way that makes you feel really good, and that you're fully in that giving and receiving state. So awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's much easier to receive when you're not working with the entire world, but the people you're working with, you're making serious impact in their lives. The joy that comes from seeing the high level of growth they're able to go through is unparalleled.
Hmm. Wow. So, top three resources for mamapreneurs. And this could be with, pre or post natal. What have been the three top resources that really are like, oh my God, I'm so glad that I had these?
That's a great question. You know, it's funny because probably from about 5 months of pregnancy on to delivery, I was obsessed with consuming as much information as I could, specifically on delivery. And maybe like the day after, all the things you wanted. So I knew every essential oil I should be using. My husband and I were practicing up to an hour a day, our hypnobirthing. I could go on and on. And in my particular case, I'm not suggesting that all of that is bad, but it really threw me when all this stuff I'd been, quote, rehearsing for didn't necessarily, the performance did not go the way as planned. And I did not feel as equipped to improvise in that uncomfortable performance as I think I could have been if I was putting more of my attention and focus on life afterwards. So it's like I know what all those resources are that I was obsessed over, but I'm hesitant to share some of them because I don't want folks to follow through that same path. I think it's important to know how you want to be the protagonist in your own story, but also to be very clear that the universe is going to throw obstacles into that story, and what's more important is how you shape your character in response to those. But one that I think is just definitely good is Kelly Mom. For all things around certainly breastfeeding and just ongoing baby development, I found that particular site integrates sort of my values around sustainability, going organic as much as possible, but without a lot of judgment if there are times when those options just aren't available to you. Like I still use that site even when exclusively pumping didn't work and I had to wean and I had to give my daughter formula. Like there were plenty of sites that made me feel like I was the most epic failure as a mother. And yeah, Kelly Mom did not do that for me.
So kellymom.com.
KellyMom.
Okay.
I think it's .com.
And then okay, go ahead.
This one is just really cliche, but what to expect during the first year was just a great guide. If something weird was going on with my little one, I just needed to flip and see, is this normal? I found that from little things such as she's likely going to be starting to say the word, dada at this point to be spot on, or those kinds of little things where you just want to make sure, is my kid doing the stuff she's supposed to be doing? I keep that in a drawer, and that's been great. And number 3 would be finding your own online community of moms who do work that's similar to what you do. Because while it can be fantastic to have moms on the ground that you have play dates with and so forth, for me, what I've needed more support with is being able to integrate my business with my life, and it requires women who understand what that business actually looks like. So if you can find those folks who get you on that level, business as well as child, I think that will really support you.
What a great. Those are great. And is there anything that, so what you said was, and I find that so much, is so many women focus during their pregnancy on the birth, and then the baby comes and it's like, okay, now what?
Right.
Right? And so is there anything that in hindsight you're like you wish you would have told your pregnant self?
Yes, and this is so ridiculous and yet so true. Spend more time around newborns. I had held one newborn my entire life, and it had been a long time since I'd held that newborn. And you can be Ivy League educated, you can have all of the money in the world, and yet all of your crap is going to come out when you hold your little person. And if you can feel comfortable changing his or her diaper, putting a car seat on, burping, all of those things beforehand, that'll ease the transition even more. So I do wish that I just spent more time around babies so that I didn't have to feel so awkward in those first days with my own, because there's nothing worse than loving the being in front of you more than words and feeling like I don't know what to do with him or her. That part was not natural for me.
Well, that kind of scares me as a pregnant woman at, almost 33 weeks of like I have not had a lot of time around infants at all.
Well, I've seen some pictures that you've seen some babies. So, even if you're out and about, you're at Whole Foods, you're grabbing juice and you see a baby, just really study him or her. You may not want to put your hands on him or her, but,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, totally. And that's what I've noticed is that there's so many babies all over the place, and I'm just noticing them. But I have a 2-year-old niece, so I've watched her development, and so I guess she's been kind of close. But yeah, I mean it's like it's been a while since she's been an infant, so yeah.
Hopefully, even just hearing that it can be awkward and that that's okay gives you the space where if it feels awkward, you don't go into that critic voice and say there's something wrong with me. Because if I could have at least just avoided that piece, I think that would have helped quite a bit. Just being a little gentler with myself in that immediate aftermath of being a new mom.
Yeah, I think that's a theme that you've been saying is this, how we as stepping into motherhood can like really get down on ourselves and really feel an enormous amount of guilt and I'm not doing this right and just a lot of beating ourselves up. So
I remember teaching a lesson to my Women in Influencer Academy while I was very pregnant, and we do a lot around Brene Brown's work, and talking about how she says that in all of her research, when she looks at the top areas of where people, particularly women, experience shame, being a mom is always number one. And I thought to myself, gosh, I hope that that's not true for me. Fortunately, I've experienced guilt, I've experienced embarrassment, which are lower level problems, she says, but I don't feel like I've ever experienced deep shame. And when you know it, despite teaching shame resilience, that for me was one of the great, I'm going to say opportunities, but at the time it felt obstacles for me to be able to work through. So it's real, it's palpable, it's not endemic to me, fortunately. But I've heard this, and I believe it fully, that what we say out loud about ourselves becomes our children's self-talk. So there's a real opportunity to watch with our little beings who are sponges, who are picking up everything. What are we saying about ourselves? Because even if they're not able to communicate back to us verbally, they're absorbing it all. And I feel really lucky, like I said, that I immediately knew when I wasn't right and did something about it, because I see the joy and the delight and the risk-taking in my daughter. And that to me is always a reminder of I made some mistakes, but I got out of them. And fortunately, I don't think it left too much of an imprint on her.
So as we close, if any of the women who are watching this, any of the heroines want to learn more about you, get in touch with you, where do they go? Where's your website? Okay, there we are. We're back. So as we close here, where if the women who are watching this, how do they find you? What website? And tell us just briefly about what you got going on.
The easiest place to find me is hotshotspeaker.com. Say that again, hotshotspeaker.com, all one word. It's free video training for women and their men who want to get rid of the cop up here, and more effectively be able to speak with confidence and competence. In terms of the stuff I'm doing in the world, influenceracademy.com, that's my women's leadership program that takes women through hands-on curriculum in negotiation, persuasion, pitching, public speaking, facilitation, and thought leadership, and yourspotlighttalk.com, which is my digital training program for how to create, book, and perform your TED-style talk.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Lex. Really
My pleasure.
appreciate all of your realness and rawness on this topic, and thank you for also sharing your wisdom. And it was just a pleasure to have you here on the Mamapreneur for Business Heroine. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.